Hi everybody, Captain Al speaking with your time training tips and 10 ticks targeted to teaching technical type transport travel through tailored tiny takeaways. The question for today, episode 3, part 1, what does the VNAV CLB Page do? This will be a ground discussion for the Boeing 747-400 and Boeing 747-8. Let's go over to the virtual simulator and take a look. We're in the virtual simulator to answer the question, what does the VNAV CLB Page do? And to get to the VNAV CLB Page, you push the VNAV function key on the CDU and that'll take you to the active VNAV page. In this case, the active VNAV page is the CLB page since we haven't taken off yet. There's 3 pages to the VNAV push button. That's climb, cruise, and descent. You find climb on page 1, you find cruise on page 2, and you find the descent page on page 3. The title of the VNAV page tells you what speed you're controlling to when you're in VNAV. And of course, as we said before, VNAV is a normal takeoff. We have VNAV arm for takeoff. It'll engage at 400 feet. Right now, the title of the page is active 175 knot climb. That means that the CLB page is active and it's controlling to a speed of 175. The 175 comes from V2. We put V2 in on the MCP. We have it here on the PFD 165. And of course, where it gets this speed of 175 is from the takeoff reference page, where we put in, or this is the FMC calculated speed of 165. You could also, if you had performance calculated speeds from your airline, you could put in the V speeds. These are enterable speeds, so you could put in a V2 speed, and that'll add 10 knots to this to come up with your V2 plus 10 speed of 175. And that's the speed right now it'll be controlling to. Once we take off and we get airborne, eventually the speed will settle somewhere between V2 plus 10 and V2 plus 25. It'll go more or less to that existing speed, and then this will change when we're airborne to that existing speed until we reach our acceleration height, which is found on the takeoff page, on page 2 here. We're in the Dash 8, by the way. And that's going to be 1,000 feet. So at 1,000 feet, then this speed will change to a limit speed climb because it'll be referencing the flap limit speed, in this case for flaps 20 until we go to flaps 10. Then it'll reference the limit speed for 10. So it goes up to the limit speed minus 5 knots until the flaps are up. Once the flaps are up, it'll re-reference to this speed, 265 below 10,000 feet. This speed is greater than 250 because of our weight. We weigh 814,000 pounds, and this speed is either going to be 250 knots below 10,000 feet, which is the U.S. requirement by regulation, or the upbug plus 20 knots, whichever is greater. So if we go to our approach reference page, we can see that the flap 30 speed is 166. And the flap up speed from that would be VREF 30 plus 80, which would be 246, and then up plus 20 would be 266. So this speed is going to be very close to that 266. In this case, it's 265. And that's the speed we'll have to maintain for operational necessity. We'd have to let ATC know that we're requesting high-speed climb during the departure, and of course, they're aware that we're heavy, and they'd give us that. Once we pass 10,000 feet, then this will drop out and we'll go to econ speed of 346 until intersecting 0.846 Mach. If you're in a country where you could be approved for a higher speed lower than 10,000 feet, and there are countries like that, then you could request a high-speed climb right when you're off the deck or as you're climbing out. And this is a deletable speed, so you can see if we came down here and pushed delete and then delete that speed transition, it will delete. And then it would strictly go to econ speed after you execute that. Now in the States, of course, you can't do that. You have to keep this speed. Notice our cruise altitude is 34,000 feet. This comes from the performance initialization page where it transferred over. When we put in our cruise altitude here, it transfers to this page. All these speeds, of course, were figured out by the FMC. The econ speed is the best economic speed, kind of minimizes trip time. And then down here at the L4 position, you have a speed restriction line, which is dashes. And we can put in a speed and restriction. So if we were told to maintain 300 knots until passing 15,000 feet, we could put that in and execute it, and then it would do that until 15,000 and then go back to econ speed. Here at one right, it's either going to be blank or it's going to have the next restriction, as we talked about in episode 2. That's a conditional waypoint. It's part of the SID. If we go to the legs page, you'll notice that we're flying at 251 heading until passing 640 feet. Once we meet that condition, this will drop out, and then it goes to the next restriction, which will be to cross Docker at or below 3,000, and then to cross Avosi at or below 5,000, and then dark at or below 12,000. So these restrictions will show up one at a time as we pass them on the climb page. If there were no restrictions, this would be blank. Under here, this is where if there's an error at that restriction, if the computer predicts we can't make that restriction, then it'll go ahead and put in a error message here saying it'll give you data on how you're not going to be crossing that waypoint at that altitude. And then we'd have to do something to intervene on that, like take the speed back towards max angle or best rate of climb speed to try to make that. If we can't make it, we'd advise ATC. Then there's a transition altitude here at 18,000. This comes from what you put in on the route page. So if you put in the origin airport, Los Angeles, it knows that's in the United States, and it automatically then will put in the transition altitude of 18,000, which is standard for the whole U.S. If you're in Europe, you're going to see, something like 6,000 or 5,000 or 8,000. Or in China, you're going to have different altitudes here based on the origin. This is where you go from altitudes to flight levels. And then in the R4 position, you have the max angle of climb speed. That's, in this case, 273 knots. That'll give you the most altitude gained over a given distance. So usually when ATC tells you, give me your best rate up through 15,000 feet, or give me your best passing 1,000. What they mean is really max angle. They want you up in the shortest distance, and that's what max angle will give you. Now you also have the best rate of climb airspeed. That's not shown on the CDU. And the best rate of climb airspeed in the Dash 8, which is what we're in, would be VREF 30 plus 120. That'll give you the best rate of climb speed until it intersects 0.83 Mach. So if you go to your approach page, VREF 30 plus 120 would give you about 286. And so rounded up to 290, then that would be your best rate of climb airspeed, 290. That would give you the most altitude gained over a given time. It's not over a given distance, it's over a given time. So it would still give you a good rate, but if you want the shortest in the highest in the shortest distance, you use max angle. If you want the best rate over a given time, you use best rate. And again, that best rate is not shown on the climb page. You have to know what that is. In the 400, if you're interested, it's flaps up plus 60, which would be the equivalent of VREF 30 plus 80, which is the up bug, and then another 60 knots on top of that. So VREF 30 plus 140 would give you the max angle, the best rate of climb speed in the 400, and that's until it intersects 0.82. Now it's interesting to note that in the Dash 8, the best rate of climb speed is closer to the max angle speed. It's more of a split in the 400 than it is in the Dash 8. The Dash 8, the speed's a lot closer between max angle and best rate of climb speed. In the 400, it's a wider speed, and that's probably attributed to the wing. the wing is, the airfoil is going to be more efficient in the Dash 8 than it is in the 400. So best rate of climb and max angle are actually closer. Like we said, this was 286, call it 290 to 273, and in the 400 it'd be a greater split. It'd be more like a 40 knot split. And then down here you have engine out. If we have an engine out, we can go to the engine out page, and that's going to give us our cruise altitude. If we're going to 340, then our max altitude for an engine out is going to be 319, and when we execute that, it would change that cruise altitude to that 31,900. Will also give us the best engine out speed in the climb if we were to lose an engine. And below that is the climb direct. Talked about that in episode 2, I believe. The climb direct again will wipe out all restrictions up to, but not including, the MCP altitude window. So right now we've got the MCP altitude window set up to 8,000. So if we hit climb direct and then we execute that, it would wipe out everything up to, but not including that 8,000 feet. Okay, with that, let's take off, and we'll see you when we're airborne.